Beyond making America great again, President Donald Trump ran on a promise to implement the largest deportation operation in U.S. history. But at what economic, legal, and human cost to American society? I'm Anelise Borges, and this is The Stream.
Is it your plan to deport everyone who is here illegally over the next 4 years?
Well, I think you have to do it.
Waking up to news that mass deportation started today.
My immigrant mother just called me on the phone, innocently asking me if she should start carrying her passport.
Immigrants will always be the backbone of America.
I think we're staring at a problem that is no longer like an immigration problem or a Latino problem. It will be a huge American problem.
Immigration is a key issue in U.S. politics. It always has been. But the past few months have placed it front and center of a debate about constitutional rights and the future of American democracy. And because this is such a divisive topic, we thought we would begin today's episode with a breakdown of the numbers based on data from 2023 from the Migration Policy Institute. Of the 51.3 million people living in America who were born in another country, 49% were U.S. citizens. Another 19% were lawful permanent residents who could become naturalized citizens over time, and 5% were in the country on student, work, diplomatic, or other temporary visas. The remaining 27%, about 13.7 million people, were undocumented. So who exactly is Trump planning on deporting, and at what pace and price? Joining us to discuss all this are Maribel Hernandez Rivera, the National Director of Immigrant Community Strategies at the American Civil Liberties Union, Alexandra Lopez, an immigration lawyer and content creator, and a member of the community said to be directly affected by this story, someone who has lived in the U.S. for 30 years but is still undocumented. We have hidden his identity for his own protection, and we'll call him Juan today, not his real name. Juan, I would actually like to start the show with you. I wanted to ask you how you and the people around you are feeling these days. How would you say the new administration's pledge to carry out the largest deportation operation in American history is impacting your community?
It's definitely the feeling in the community. Very scared. Scared for you're walking out of your house and you're not sure if you're going to come back to your house. Scared that you can't go grocery shopping. You can't just run your regular errands. And you're not sure if your clock is ticking to stay in this country. And it can end at any given minute with the new administration. And the new laws continue to pass every week since January 20th.
Fear, then. And as we said at the start, you've been in the U.S. for 30 years. Do you even remember anything other than life in America? And if they were, for example, to deport you, how foreign would the country you were born in be to you?
I definitely don't remember a love for Mexico. Again, I was brought here at the young age of 7. So I did all of my grade school, middle school, high school, college, here in the U.S. So now for a total of 30 years that I've been in this country. If I were to get deported to Mexico, I'd have to start from zero in a country where, even though my blood is 100% Mexican, I would definitely be in a foreign land from my perspective.
Absolutely. You're currently waiting for a U visa, but that doesn't seem to guarantee much at this stage, right?
As we've seen with the new administration, they keep changing and going around loopholes, making new laws on a weekly basis, like I mentioned. Currently, I'm waiting for a U visa, but that doesn't guarantee that maybe next week those visas won't be canceled as well.
We're obviously not going to go into details about why you're still undocumented. The road to become a U.S. citizen can be very cumbersome, and you came to the U.S. It wasn't even your decision to be there. I want to bring Alexandra in. Can you tell us some of the most significant changes in terms of migration policy that have been made by this administration?
For my clients in particular, which tend to be from Latin America, definitely the expansion of what is called expedited removal. Now, expedited removal essentially is a deportation without the right to defend yourself in front of a judge. And so prior to Trump taking office, expedited removal existed in limited circumstances. And what we're seeing now is that expedited removal is being amplified, expanded, and hundreds of thousands of people who before did not have to worry about being deported without having the opportunity to defend themselves now are at risk. And as Juan mentioned, that creates a lot of fear going out to run your daily errands, considering the possibility that you might be detained and might never have the opportunity to explain to a judge why you might have a lawful pathway to becoming a permanent resident or eventually a U.S. citizen in this country.
Yeah, and as we heard from Juan, we've heard from other members of communities that they are not even leaving their homes these days. They are so afraid that they are not going to work. They're not sending their children to school. As of last week, some 250 flights took off since Trump took office, according to data reviewed by the New York Times. That's about the same level as the final months of the previous administration. So, Maribel, is it fair to say that it's not so much, at least for now, the number of deportations, but the way they are being carried out that is being questioned here? The methods, the military planes, the human chains, I mean, the pressure on other countries to receive their citizens, and of course the invoking of a wartime law to remove migrants without due process.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Anelise, and thank you for having me. I think it's really important to note that the methods and the approaches of this administration are both unconstitutional and cruel. So let's talk about some of the policies that have changed from day one. Day one, this administration attempted to end birthright citizenship in the United States. Now, it's important to note that birthright citizenship is something that comes from the Constitution. Now, right now we're talking about people who have been sent from the United States to Guantanamo, or people who are being sent from the United States to El Salvador, another country, another jail, a system where they don't have the same due process, where people's rights are not being respected. Now, this is unconstitutional. It's illegal. And so it's really important to note that this administration is clearly not caring about the law, clearly not caring about the Constitution, and clearly not caring about how cruel this is. I can tell you, Anelise, that I have been on the phone with mothers in Venezuela saying, I know that my loved one is in Guantanamo. And I ask them, how do you know? And they say, because I saw it via a tweet through X. Imagine being a mother and realizing that your loved one is in Guantanamo because they saw it via social media. And they're desperate and they don't know how to speak to their loved ones. They don't know why their loved one is there. They don't understand any of the issues. So due process in this country is very much being harmed, as well as just thinking about these are human beings. There has been no contact with the people who go into these black holes, no contact with their lawyers, no contact with their family members. The administration is attempting to justify this by just saying, well, we believe that they are this, they are that, but there are no actual evidence. They're not providing us the important information that we need to make sure that things are being done legally. So this is really worrisome because it's really undermining our process of law. And I should also say, just this Friday, this administration threatened American lawyers. And it said they're threatening with sanctions, American lawyers who argue before government attorneys. Now we're being threatened. So really the rule of law is under attack at this moment.
When it comes to Trump's policies pushing the limits of the law, the White House ignored a judge order to turn the planes transporting 100 Venezuelan nationals around. They were reportedly members of the Tren de Aragua gang and were sent to El Salvador. Take a look at this.
It's known as the confinement of terrorism, and it is reserved for the worst murderers and gang members of El Salvador that had the highest murder rate. That's where they sent undocumented immigrants. That's where they sent these Venezuelans. They didn't even bother to send them back to their own country. Less than 2% of all immigrants in the United States had committed crimes. The inhumane practices, the cruelty, the evilness of what it is, ICE, Tom Homan, Trump, and this administration, I think there's going to be consequences that are going to be far greater than what you think you are accomplishing. Because here's the deal. Under the Enemies Act of 1798, this is the guise in which they're using to deport people and declare them criminals without having any proof. And that could happen to me, you, or any citizen of the United States. Do not get it twisted. This act in itself gives the president more powers than he usually would have.
Now, Alexandra, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection added a self-deportation feature to its mobile phone app. What are you hearing from your clients when it comes to tools like these?
Definitely dangerous, because the Alien Enemies Act, let's just remember, the times that it has been used in U.S. history are less than a handful. And the last time this was used was during World War II, and it was used to intern people of Japanese descent during World War II. Wow. So it's really important to know that this wartime law is currently being used when we're not at war. It's currently being used to justify sending people to a prison where there's no due process, where people don't have their rights protected. It's being used to justify sending people away just because somebody felt like this person might be this or that. It's really important to note that this is affecting all of us, because if they can do this to people currently at either Guantanamo or El Salvador, they can do this to all of us. This is highly worrisome. And I want to make sure that we know the ACLU, we have sued. We're currently in court suing for this violation of right. And we're waiting for the court to go through their process to find out what is happening, because a lot of what's happening right now is not transparent. We don't have full information. We don't have it. The family members don't have it, and neither do the attorneys.
That is staggering. Alexandra, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection added this self-deportation feature to its mobile phone app. What are you hearing from your clients when it comes to tools like these?
Well, I think they're useless. Many people previously used what was called the CBP-1 app to lawfully enter the country. In other words, they were making appointments and they showed up to their appointments to enter the country through a port of entry. And now they are asking the same group of people who had this app downloaded on their phone to use it to self-deport, many of whom have been here less than 2 years if they entered with CBP-1, definitely within the last administration. And so logically, a lot of the people that entered using CBP-1 entered seeking asylum. They were fleeing persecution in their home country. And now the government is saying, actually, you can use the same app to self-deport, which naturally is not going to be used in the numbers that the government plans if people were fleeing persecution in their own country. This was a mechanism used to come in lawfully. I do not have any reports personally of any client using it, because we are continuing with their asylum claims, and hopefully they will be successful and eventually permanent residents in this country.
And then there is the case of green card holder Mahmoud Khalil, detained and threatened with deportation by the Trump administration, who said Khalil's arrest was the first of many more to come. The case has raised many questions about free speech on American college campuses, as well as the process that would allow for the deportation of a legal resident. Take a look.
Columbia University just confirmed that they will be suspending, expelling, and revoking the degrees of students who were involved in the solidarity encampments for Gaza and pro-Palestinian protests last spring. This comes less than a week after ICE kidnapped and detained Mahmoud Khalil, who was a student activist last spring. People have the right to protest. The First Amendment. Are we losing it, people? The President of the United States sent agents to kidnap and to attempt to deport a man who has a green card for speaking. If Mahmoud Khalil can get deported for this, so can anyone else.
Maribel, can we talk about the case of Halil, and what that means for other students and for freedom of speech, but also about this newly launched program reportedly using AI to sift through pro-Palestine content on social media in order to revoke people's visas.
So I can tell you that this is another example of this administration going against people who dissent with their views. This is another example of the administration going against the Constitution, because let's be very, very clear. The First Amendment protects everybody in the United States, whether you're a U.S. citizen, whether you are a person who's an immigrant, anybody who's in the United States is protected by the First Amendment, and we have the right to free speech. So this case is all about squashing dissent, is using people's political views against them, and that is unconstitutional, and that is against the law. And the ACLU, as well as our partners, we are in court right now fighting that case.
Again, it's a vast array of issues here that we have to discuss, and there's so many executive orders that have been passed, and it's like every day we wake up to more news. Alexandra, Trump's administration has also said that they would revoke the legal status of more than 500,000 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And now these people have been warned to leave the country before their permits are canceled on the 24th of April. I mean, do these people have any legal option to stay?
So many people who entered using what we call the CHNV, humanitarian parole program, which is the program that you are referring to, have explored seeking asylum, specifically from Cuba, Venezuela, and have done so within the confines of what the law requires them to do, which is to seek it generally within 1 year of entry or with, the cancellation of a lawful status, in their case, their parole. Now, the problem is that the Trump administration has also said that they are not going to process benefits sought by people who entered using this program. In other words, they're saying, sure, you can apply for asylum, or you can apply for a family-based petition if you marry, for example, a U.S. citizen, but we are not going to process that right now. They have stopped processing these benefits. So they're essentially left powerless in seeking a benefit and doing things the right way, quote unquote, and have to wait in limbo until great organizations like the ACLU, challenge them in court and maybe force their hand to proceed and continue processing these applications. But right now, many of them are stuck in limbo.
Juan, I want to bring you back in briefly, if you will, just to get your feeling, because as we're discussing these measures, right, and these percentages and these numbers, we're talking about real people like you. How does that make you feel to have an administration just basically targeting people that have come to, that have gone to the United States as yourself, sometimes even before they knew what was going on in their lives? It was a decision made by their parents. It must be really hard to actually even sit here and listen to this conversation.
It is very hard and very sad, just because this administration definitely is making us feel less human. It's making us feel like criminals. There's no words that I can use to describe this feeling. People, again, they are, in my case, immigrants here in the United States. Sometimes we know, they're just here to look for a better world, for a better way of life. And now even that is being taken away from us. So it's definitely very sad.
All that for, obviously, political gains. Some analysts saying that Trump couldn't care less in terms of what that means for his approval ratings, because he's not going to actually run anymore. So who cares? Many people do care about the economic impact of this, and in terms of how much this will cost the U.S. government. The pro-immigration American Immigration Council estimates a one-time push to deport all undocumented immigrants would cost $315 billion, not to mention the loss in tax revenue, consumer spending, and labor shortages. Take a look at this.
Is deportations of immigrants has caused such a huge rippling effect throughout the farm industry that it's caused many laborers who are immigrants to just not show up to work. Many of them have self-deported and gone back to wherever they're from. Going through the fields here in Ventura County, there was no one working. I'm hearing reports that some farmers are saying that 75% of their workforce did not show up to work on Friday. So what does that mean? It means food is going to stay in the vines and rot and go bad. And it means we're going to have a disruption in our food supply chain. So everyone better buckle up because food's about to shoot up really high. The cost of strawberries, the cost of avocados, the cost of lettuce, the cost of everyday things we eat and take for granted are going to shoot up because there is no one in the fields to pick them.
Maribel, because some people only understand problems like these when it actually touches their pockets. Can you talk to us about the economic impact of these policies? I mean, industries such as manufacturing, agriculture, and construction are likely to be dramatically impacted.
Yes, Anelise, it's really important to note that people who are immigrants are part of our communities. There are family members, there are our neighbors, there are our children's best friends, they are our nurses, our healthcare workers. So they are really an integral part of this community. So when they are under attack, our communities are under attack. So when we talk about the economy, we know that report after report has shown that the economy has done well because of immigrants. It is because of immigrants that we haven't yet gone into a recession. It is because of immigrants that many of the jobs that needed to be filled have been filled. And in fact, it was immigrants who were there putting their lives at risk when we had COVID and the pandemic and everybody was at home. But people who are immigrants were out there making sure that our economy and our communities continue to run. Now, one thing that I think is really important to note, Alexandra mentioned this, is that right now, this administration is really going after everybody. They're going after people who currently are documented, and they are making them undocumented in order to be able to fulfill their promise of mass deportations. Now think about this. We're talking about going after families. We're talking about going after babies who under the Constitution are born in the United States and have the right to citizenship. Now this administration is going after babies. So what can we really expect? And now it's important to note that a president has a lot of power, but they are not a king. They don't have all the power. We have to get together. We have to use all of our tools. We have to go to court. We have to go to the streets. We have to go to the legislature. We know that states have a lot of power too. That is why we have a system of federalism where states hold power. So as the ACLU, we have been also working with state and local officials to make sure that we create a firewall of freedom where we're protecting our communities against this cruelty and against this injustice.
Alexandra, do you have a call to action today to people watching us in terms of what can be done to protect communities across the U.S.?
I have always said, call your representatives and hold them accountable. Yes, they are government officials, but don't forget that they work for you. Put them to work. If they are not taking action, then they are not doing their job. They should be exhausted like the rest of us in their messaging. And if you feel like your messaging is not being communicated through your representatives, you need to make that known. Remember, they are employees and they work for the people. Call them, write them, make noise, make sure your voice is heard, and use them as a platform for your voice.
Juan, a final word from you. Do you have a message to people watching us today?
For my fellow community, I just say let's stay positive. Stay positive to the point where we need to keep showing this country what we bring to the table as immigrants. This country was based on immigrants, and it's going to continue being based on immigrants. It's going to be a hard 4 years, but we have to stay as positive as possible.
Stay positive. That speaks volumes about the resilience of these communities. Juan, I would like to thank you so much for being part of the stream today. Thanks also to Maribel and Alexandra for your time. Thank you for being part of the stream. And thank you all for watching. Stay in touch with us online. You can use the hashtag or the handle AJStream to send us your questions and suggestions. See you next time.